he hit that line. So like he's in the fairway, he's looking at a good upshot, and so now he's gonna make the par. And I think a couple times I was like, well, since he went for it, I have to go for it as well. And so instead of playing the line that I would normally play, I would go for the aggressive line that I saw you just hit. And then in those times, you get desperate, and so you want to go next hole and get that stroke back. And then you're more inclined to do make more mistakes if you're doing that, as opposed to just letting that go and then just playing the next hole how you do.
Forces you to live in that pressure, and you're either going to crack and you're going to get worse and you're going to know what you need to work on, or you're going to thrive and get used to it, and then that pressure will subside and you'll be able to continue to grow. Welcome in, everyone, to the Chain Clankers Disc Golf Podcast. We've got another awesome show for you guys today. Today, we are going to be talking about why you keep losing to your friends in disc golf, why you are not able to be competitive, and how you can flip the switch on that, become competitive, beat your friends, win league night, go out and win some tournaments. I think this is going to be a very helpful, open, and honest conversation today between Horacio and I. And like we've always said, we want to let you learn through us. We want us to struggle and you to not have to go through that struggle to be able to improve your games. So these are going to be some really fun and critical tips that we think you can implement that will help you win more. Let's go ahead. Let's bring in Horacio. Horacio, how are we doing today?
I'm good. We got to go play yesterday. Finally, we're now, well, I know for myself, I'm only getting to play about maybe like once a week now, maybe. And golly, I don't know how you guys do it. I'm used to playing, I don't know, 3 to 5 times a week. Sometimes, I was playing like almost every day, even like just practicing, I would call playing. And now just like super busy and schedules and stuff. I'm only able to play like on the weekends. So like once a week, and it sucks. This sport is definitely more fun when you're good. And one way to be good is to be consistently playing. I would say that's definitely an advantage, that if you've never played like more than once or twice a week, that's something that you don't notice until you quit doing that. And so, a lot of you guys that are like, I'm not really improving that much, or like, I don't feel like I'm getting any better. It's probably because you're only playing, once a week. I know that I have definitely, my game has gone down drastically since going back down to one, because you're just not getting all those reps in. Your muscle memory, is starting to get funky. My putting was all over the place. It just wasn't in the routine. I just wasn't in the zone because I'm not playing consistently. But, most of us, or I guess most people, you can only play, once or twice a week because same reasons, especially right now with daylight savings. It's hard to get out there before it gets dark. So you can only kind of play on the weekends. And I know we were going to go and kind of just play for fun, but because I knew my game wasn't that great last week, I went and played with a buddy. And if you've ever like been into the gym and like working out and stuff, and it's like something where you work out every day and maybe only take like 1 or 2 rest days, and you're building that muscle memory, that strength, and then maybe you get sick and you come down with a cold or something and you can't go to the gym for like 2 weeks or something, or even if you go on vacation or whatnot and you don't go to the gym for a week, and then you go back to the gym after a week and a half, and you just feel flabby, you feel weak, you don't feel the same. And it takes you a good, 3 to 5 days to get back into it and feel like you did again. That's what I felt like last week when I went to play. Now that I'm not playing regularly, I just felt weird, felt like I had no control, and that consistency I was missing. And I didn't have that much fun because it was just all over the place. And I kind of gave up just because I wasn't hitting my shots, wasn't hitting my putts, and it wasn't very fun. And so yesterday when we went to play, we could have just played for fun or whatnot, but I was told Quentin, I was like, hey, you want to put a wager on this, keep score? Because that way, to keep me kind of in it and force me to actually play the game. And I think that helped, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I even kind of said this yesterday, sometimes I like to go a little bit without playing just because it can kind of reset my body. And sometimes I feel like I'm coming out swinging and I'm better. And then there's sometimes the opposite, just like you're saying, I think the gym analogy is really, really good, because if you've ever worked out, or literally anything you do, maybe it's, something you do at your job every single day, and then you go on vacation for a week and you come back, and maybe that first day back is a little bit like, oh, whoa, I'm a little nervous with what I'm doing. That's definitely something that really hit home for me. That was such a good analogy. And yesterday was definitely good, bad, great, ugly. It just kind of, there was moments where you could have given up, and then it was like, no, there's actually something on the line, so you have to force yourself to keep going, which I think is super important. And if you do want to get good and you only have the couple of days to do so, I think listening to this podcast helps you, because it keeps your mentality straight and it keeps you focused with your disc golf growth. As well as, I think if you're able just to get out to the field or just putt for, even if it's 10 to 15 minutes a day, you don't even have to do it every single day. I think that will also continue to help elevate your game. And maybe you don't even have time to do that. Maybe just when you get home, do some sit-ups or some push-ups, or something to try to be a little bit more athletic. Do some stretching, because those are things you can do at home that's not disc golf related that will inevitably help your disc golf game. There are plenty of guys, even on our last episode, Gavin Rathbun said that by his injury and forcing himself to get more athletic, he's going to be feeling better, and he's going to be able to play disc golf at a higher level. And I think that's very, very true. So that's something that I definitely want to work on this offseason, as well as getting in a more athletic state to play disc golf. But with what you were saying, Horatio, in just kind of the theme of today's episode of, why are you losing to your friends, how to beat your friends, how to beat, your enemies, how to win league nights, tournaments, those kinds of things. And I think playing in those pressured situations are just so, 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 so critical, because you cannot match that feeling. We've played, I don't know, however many times we've played together before, probably over 100 rounds or something like that. But yesterday, going into the final six, there was more pressure in that situation than there was in our last 60 rounds or whatever there was, because it mattered. Something mattered going down the line. And I think that that is truly something that will help anyone's disc golf game, is if you can add pressure to your shots, to your putts, to your rounds, it forces you to live in that pressure, and you're either going to crack and you're going to get worse, and you're going to know what you need to work on, or you're going to thrive and get used to it, and then that pressure will subside and you'll be able to continue to grow. That's just kind of my 2 cents right there.
Yeah, definitely. With that, let's jump into this. Just kind of things that I think for us, that pop out, and personally, looking at my own game and stuff that makes me, in the rounds that we have played, and I ended up winning yesterday, but almost lost. And I
Why
think
don't you real quick recap kind of just how the round went overview wise, and maybe scoreage ish going down, just kind of what happened.
Yeah, so we're pretty close. Skill level now we're pretty close. We're about the same. So our rounds are fun because they're competitive. Because we can kind of just play normally, and the scores will be pretty good. You definitely are a much better putter than I am, and that's definitely one thing that was messing me up yesterday and almost cost me to lose. But let me see. I
If you
had.
need me to, I remember it very dear to my heart because of how it ended.
Yeah, you can go for it. I don't really remember. I just know, definitely starting out, I was having decent drives, but then just missing putts. I think I missed like three, like 15-foot putts that would have
Yeah.
given me birdies, extra strokes.
Yeah. So, I mean, very quick overview is, it started off, I think we both were even through one, and then I will get into it later, but just a silly shot selection on two, taking a triple bogey, and you were able to take a par. That gave you a 3-stroke lead that was able to be cut down back to nothing over the next 4-ish holes. And then I built up a 3-stroke lead, and I think we were at 9-ish, and I think I had 3 strokes, and then we'll get into it later. Hit an incredible shot, terrible landing spot, take a bogey. I think you either got a birdie or a par, and then the same thing happened the next one. So now we're even again, and then pretty much the rest of the way it went, I picked up one to go up by one, and then that was tied because of a missed putt that came out literally the worst putt I had all day. It came out so strange out of my hand. So now we're back to even, and I got an unlucky break and went out of bounds, which I think that's how that hole played, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that one did play. I think that was the only one that played road out of bounds. And then after that, we went into 16. You had a 1-stroke lead, and yes. Sorry, yeah, we went into 16. You had a 1-stroke lead. You threw yours kind of off into the trees, easy par, probably not a birdie. And then I threw mine somehow 50 feet long, which what looked like was an absolute ace run, landed 55 long. And then you putted first and made an incredible birdie save. And I was like, dude, you've got to be kidding me. I was like, we were going to go down even with 2 to play, instead getting the birdie, and I was unable to connect from 55, which then gave you 2 strokes with 2 to play, goes out of bounds. I'm able to pick up a stroke, so it's 1 stroke to play on 18. And the last time that I played this 18th hole was well over a year ago. It was that tournament where I totaled my vehicle, and I think I took like a 12 or a 13 on this hole. So me in this hole literally just not good. And to kind of set the stage for you, I mean, it's like a 450, whatever it is, distance wise, but it's a complete tunnel shot the entire time. You've probably got 30 to 45 feet in between the tree lines, but if you get off of the fairway and you somehow get behind the trees, I mean, good luck getting back in without just pitching up. And that kind of sort of happened to me. I mean, after the first shot, after my upshot, and it kind of sort of landed by the trees, and your upshot was literally fine. It was at that moment that I gave up because I knew I was not getting the stroke here, and then ended with you taking it home. So yeah, that's just kind of the brief overview of how the round went before we get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah. And now that you got that, we'll kind of talk about why. Yeah, because I think so. What I end up winning by 2 strokes.
One or two.
Yeah.
Once you got the par on that hole, I didn't even count what I got because I knew I would have had to birdie.
Yeah, because besides, I had one OB where I went over the water and then it just hit the edge and never came back in. So I had an OB. Um, but besides that, I didn't have hole one. I hit an early tree. Besides that, I didn't have a whole lot of mistakes. Um, those kind of were the only ones. It was mostly a lot of my putting, and I would say that my first tip uh, is if you have trouble you know, losing motivation or not staying in the game, I would say is make a wager with your buddies, whether it's like $5 or something, or loser buys lunch or something like that. We did a 6 pack of beer. That was our wager. And personally, for me, that just kind of gives me an incentive to not give up. Because sometimes either you get tired or you get distracted or whatnot, and you kind of just start playing not as quite as you normally would if you had something on the line. So I would say if that might help you, making a bet or making a wager. Maybe one of these days we'll do one where we get a disc out of someone's bag. I don't
I'm
think
not
Quinn's
putting that
quite ready
disc
for
up.
that.
I'm not putting that MD4 up.
And he'll probably stop putting that in his bag, or he'd take that out before we make the bet. Just so.
Yeah.
Because yeah, so making a bet, because I think my main issue I had yesterday with me almost losing was not focusing. I had a lot of birdie putts that were definitely gimmies, putts that Quentin would have easily made, like no question. He would not have missed. There was one where I was so close to the basket. I think it was like 10 feet maybe. I was parked for a birdie and I had my backpack on. I didn't even bother taking my putter out. I just threw it was a Raptor. I just threw it at the basket because it was like a tap in pretty much. I was just, it's easy. We've all made those. And it hit the top of the band and came out. And so I gave up on there. So I guess that was, partially not being focused, but also not taking it seriously. Even those tap in birdies that you've made before in the backyard or every other round that you make all the time, not taking it seriously. And so I would say probably the first 9 holes, I wasn't like super serious. Even though we had a bet on the line, I was kind of, just like, like I haven't played in a while. I'm not going to be that great. I'm not crazy about this course. I wasn't like fully in the zone. I don't think it was until about hole, 8, 7 or 8, where I was like, okay, this is a lot closer. My shots aren't that bad today. I'm parking some holes. I'm just not making putts. And I think that's about when really started to focus. And all that did was, kind of make me give a little more effort into my putts and then also try to make better shot selection. So I would say that would be the biggest one for me is just focusing better.
Yeah, and I like that you bring up shot selection because that's kind of where I'm going to start off here. Is the shot selection is something you actually have to legitimately think about when you're playing in this style. Because if you're just playing with your buddies, then you can be like, I'm gonna throw two here, or I'm gonna take my better shot here. So I think that the forcing yourself to only be throwing the one shot makes you better, and you have to live with your shot selection, golly. And that for me told me a couple of things. The first thing is that on hole 2 there is a just it's the well, it's right next to 18, so it's the side you don't want to be on if you're playing 18. So if you go right, you're literally in jail. And getting back into the fairway is as good as doing a pitch out. And so you have the entire left side. The basket is straight. It literally hugs the tree line the entire time, but it's straight. So it's, I don't know, what, 315 ish, something like that, maybe. It's virtually a straight shot, but if you go if you go 10 feet right, you're hitting the trees and you're donezo. So it's really a throw something that is not going to go to the right. And immediately what I did was I pulled out a Hades and I said, oh, yeah, it's just going to flip up and go straight. It's not going to go to the right. Even though I know in my game I've been struggling with overturning things. And of course, what happened, I overturned it. It went to the right, hit the trees, and triple bogey. So instead, what should I have done? I should have just thrown an Enigma as straight as I can and just have it hyzer out a little bit, and then just have an easy upshot for a 3, or maybe a circles 2 look. Or I could have thrown a forehand way out wide and have just let it hyzer in towards the basket. Those should have been the options. Instead, going with a bad shot selection puts me in a position to where now I have to try to make something special happen. So I've got a little gap that I can go through with a forehand, which if I would have hit that gap, it would have been fine, but your likelihood of hitting that gap is not very high. Or I could have done a forehand roller. I'm not confident in my forehand roller game to have been able to do anything with that, even though that probably should have been my shot. So next thing you know, hit tree, triple bogey. So continuing on with that, you really have to continue to think, what is this hole? What disc can do what I needed to do here? Sometimes it's not always super aggressive that you need to go. Sometimes you need to just play the smart shot and just do what is going to be correct and what is going to let you to live to fight another day. I think that's what is important, is you don't always have to play hero golf. You don't always have to try to make the impossible shots. You don't always have to make the birdie from 60 feet out. Sometimes it is better to play smart strategic golf than always having the gas all the way down.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And I think that's one thing that even though um, right now like we were talking about, not being able to play every day, studying is something that you can still do at home. Watching Joe mess, but not just watching it and being like, oh, this is fun, or like, oh wow, it's a cool shot. Watching the players and just try to get inside of their heads, try to think about, oh, there's the shot they went with, this is the disc they're going with, or like maybe if they're scrambling, and just seeing what they, a lot of times you'll see them go into the woods or somewhere and go in there with like 3 or 4 discs. Try to think how they're thinking, try to figure out why they went with what they did and how it worked out. And yeah, even though those are pros and they can do stuff that, us normal players, can't really do, you can still kind of try to get inside their head and study them. And that way, when you do get out on the course and you're playing and you're in one of those situations, you're like, well, I saw this before, when I was watching Joe and Wysocki or Gibson or whoever was in this situation and they went with this shot, or they did this and it worked for them. And then so I might just go ahead and try that and see how it works out. And because that'll help, so even though you can't play, you can still study. There's a lot more to disc golf than just going out and playing. There's a lot of mental to it and like knowledge. It's like anything else. Okay, yeah, and so that's kind of what brings me to my second point, and that would be getting desperate. So there was times when, this can go either both ways. There was times when I had easy birdies and I would miss the opportunity and I would give you a stroke by not making that birdie. I was giving you a stroke because it was tapping birdies. Um, and then other times there was times where I would get a bogey and also giving you a stroke because you would par. And then, that is going to upset most people, especially if you're playing like in this competition setting. And then in those times, you get desperate. And so you want to go next hole and get that stroke back. And then you're more inclined to, make more mistakes if you're doing that, as opposed to just letting that go and then just playing the next hole how you normally would, still being competitive, but you're not going out to seek a stroke. You're not like you're out on a mission. I have to absolutely birdie this. Instead, just playing it how you normally would, being smart about it. And so I would say that there was definitely times where I'm like, man, I have to make the stroke up. And then so I would get a little more aggressive on my shot or be a little more aggressive on my upshot. And sometimes it works out, but when it doesn't, that's when you make those mistakes and you have to recoup. I know a couple of times, even on that first hole where you went out in that tree line, and literally like the right side of this hole is just lined with trees every 2 feet or something like that. There's very small gaps. So when you go out of there, and I think technically it's supposed to be played as like OB, but we weren't playing any of that as OB. So in some situations in those shots, and even when we got back around to the other hole, I was in the same situation on the other side of the trees. And because I needed to get a stroke, I went with the aggressive shot instead of kind of just trying to pitch out and trying to get out of that. Because you definitely on that second hole, you went for it to try to get back into the fairway and you hit another tree and bounce. You were still outside of that tree line. And so you had to do that same thing again. So I think, if you do you agree that maybe because you were out there, you knew you were losing a stroke, so you had to get back in there and still park the shot even though you knew your chances of getting through those trees were very slim?
Yeah, I would agree. There was definitely a moment where it's just like, I'm just going to throw this as hard as I can and see if it gets through. And maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but there's no shot here because I was too close to the base of the tree that I couldn't actually go over the top. My gap to throw a forehand roller was a foot, if that, but I would have to have thrown it pretty much right at the ground in front of me, which means, if I was just going off basic math, it would have went and then just curled back into the tree line anyways. So yeah, I tried to do the aggressive thing and thought that I could slip through kind of like Gannon Burr did and get, make something out of nothing. But nonetheless was unable to do that. And I think you have a good point on the trying to be too aggressive. And I'm going to lump in my next point of the pressure here, because there are points where, and I already talked on it a little bit, you should just take the easy pitch out, take the easy opportunity. Don't always run everything. And another good example, at least for me, is I was in circle 2, probably could have made the putt. It was 40-45, and I knew 10 feet behind the basket, it was back down into the creek, and you probably weren't making that par putt. So I decided to run it because I wasn't going to lay up there, and I missed, but it was an unconfident layup or an unconfident putt that then put me pretty much at the edge of going into the creek anyways. And so then that putt going back was only like 10 feet, but it was such an unconfident putt because I was trying to be too aggressive instead of just taking the smart shot. The score would have been the same either way, but hurt the confidence level. And so being too aggressive, going into 18, I knew I had to make up a stroke. So I tried to play absolute hero golf, and tried to just have the biggest rip I've ever had on that hole, and just couldn't do it. And I think that pressure also really causes problems, because you're trying to do too much. And I even think about that on 16, where I juiced past this 190-foot hole by 50 feet. And I literally guess was too amped up trying to catch up, and the pressure got to me. So I threw it too far, and I wanted to make sure I didn't leave it short. And so it's that pressure that learning to deal with by putting yourself in these situations allows you to improve your game, and you can learn when to be aggressive, when not to be aggressive. There has to be a reward for being aggressive. You can't just be aggressive because you're trying to, I don't know, constantly go for hero disc golf. There has to be a reward. If I could have played 18 over again, and 18 is already an issue for me because of the literally the worst hole I've ever had in competition. I already had that in my head stepping up to 18. I was like, dang, I literally could have gone into 18 with a 3 to 5 stroke lead and still felt incredibly nervous because of what happened to me there. So I was already in my head that this is not going to be a good hole for me. Something bad is going to happen. And instead, I should have been like, well, I have nothing to lose. Horatio has everything to lose here because he has the probability of making a mistake with the more pressure than I do. Instead, I was putting unneeded pressure on myself. So understanding your situation, and also understanding like, hey, just because the guy's ahead of you by one doesn't mean he has it easy. Like, he still has to make his shot. You're going to watch what he does, and then you're going to do your shot. So I think putting yourself in pressure situations is so important, and doing them over and over and over again until you don't feel that pressure in your shot selection can be at its best, I think is what's important to helping you win more of those rounds.
Yeah, definitely. And so, with that, I want to talk about my last one. Uh, playing to Not playing to the style, or I guess to the level of the player you're playing against. Some people are more competitive than others. Some people are more um, energetic in their game than others. I would say definitely you're probably more aggressive than I am in game style. And if I'm playing against sometimes I'm like, well, he's being aggressive, or like he's going for it or whatever. Like I have to do the same. And I think in some holes or some shots, I made that mistake, especially when the player playing against has the tee pad. So let's say you go first and you lace it, and I'm like, damn, I'm like, well, that's not what I was going to do. That's not the line I was going to go for. Or like, I wasn't going to be that aggressive on this hole because I don't usually hit that line. But he did. He hit that line. So like he's in the fairway. He's looking at a good upshot. And so now he's gonna make the par. And I think a couple times I was like, well, since he went for it, I have to go for it as well. And so instead of playing the line that I would normally play, I would go for the aggressive line that I saw you just hit. Whether you hit it intentionally, because we're both about, we know our game. And we know that sometimes when you pure a line, a lot of it's just kind of luck. Like wow, like I hit that line, but if you had to do it again, probably wouldn't hit that same line again. Like I can confidently say that about my game. And but that doesn't matter when you're playing. The fact that matters is you did hit that line, you pured it, and you're up there. And so I'm like, wow, like well, no, I have to get pretty close to keep up with this game pace. And so on a couple of holes, that's what I did. I went to try and make the same shot, or make the same line that you did, and I couldn't hit it. I didn't either get as lucky, or I couldn't hit the line as well as you did, and I would be in a bad situation. So I would say, don't worry about who you're playing against. Especially um, if the person that they're constantly getting the tee pad, which I feel like we had a good balance of switching back and forth tee pads, taking the box. But if you're playing with someone who's constantly taking the tee pad and you're seeing them, just hit good lines, don't worry about it. Just play your line. You're going to get your shot, and it's going to be better. Your shot is going to be better if you're confident in the shot that you're throwing than in the shot that you're trying to replicate. You're not going to be as confident, and that you're not going to be as your follow through isn't going to be as good, and the shot probably will likely not be as good as well. And then you're going to end up somewhere where you don't want to be, and you're going to have to scramble, and then that's where you're going to make mistakes. Um, And, that's my last point that I want to talk about, but just with that one, another quick one is having the mindset that you're not allowed to make bogeys, or like you're not supposed to make bogeys. Even the professionals take bogeys. There's something about, I don't know what players is, especially in rec, I've played where players bogey a lot, but they have a mindset of that, like, bogeying is like the absolute worst, the end of the world, and it's illegal. Like, you're not allowed to take a bogey. And so they'll have a bad drive, and I'm talking for myself too, have a bad drive, and now you're looking at it and you're like, well, this hole's over. Like, I'm not going to get a par, I'm not going to get a birdie. Like, this is done. And then so you get upset, and then you kind of give up on the hole, because you don't want to take a bogey, even though you're going to take the bogey. Like, that's one thing that you have to think about. It's like, if you had a bad drive, accept the fact that you're going to take a bogey, and just try to take the best possible bogey that you could, the easiest, take a tap and bogey, just like when you mess up on a birdie shot and you can't take the birdie, give yourself the easy tap in par. Same way for a bogey. If you know you're going to take a bogey, set yourself up to where, you're not going to make it in. Don't go for the hero shot for the three. Set yourself up to where you can set yourself up for the easy upshot, and then, you're parked for a tap in bogey, and then you don't have to worry about putting. So just accept it. Don't have that mindset. And I think that will help you out a ton.
Yeah, I think that's really good stuff there. And it kind of brings that back the point of being confident. You have to be confident out on the course no matter what's going on, right? Whether or not you just threw the greatest shot of your life or the worst shot of your life, you have to find a way to dig deep and have some confidence, or your next shot is going to be worse than what you just threw. So it's also one of those things where, and this is funny to me because I posted this story about how you were in a bad spot, scrambled to make a really good par save, and then two people swiped up and said, "Yo, dog, that's a foot fault. You should have called him." It was I think it was one of the holes where I hit the bridge. It might still be up there. Look at it. And if you look at the story, they're right. Your left foot is definitely in front of the disc. But I didn't call it in the moment. But the point is when you're in a bad spot, you have to have the confidence to be able to put up a good shot, right? So for me, on the same exact hole, I had the best drive I've ever had on that hole, and it hit the bridge and got stuck behind it. So I probably lost 30 feet. Now I'm in a spot where I can't even do a normal forehand or backhand because I'm at an angle that is lower than the bridge. So now the bridge is pretty much eye level with me. So now I've got a really tough shot ahead of me, and not having confidence in what I want to do, thinking about it, not knowing what disc to throw, all that stuff. That unconfidence led to a poor shot, which led to a bogey, where I think that having the confidence and coming up with a game plan, sticking to that game plan, allows you to make the shot, be closer, and inevitably your round will be better. The other point with that is, just because you've missed a putt that you felt you should have made, you cannot let that ruin your confidence with putting. So something that happened to me was on like the last 6 holes, I missed like 2 step putts, and they just came out of my hand really weird. And I should have stopped what I was doing, stopped thinking about everything I was doing, and just let my muscle memory take over. Instead, I hyper analyzed everything that I was doing, which caused me to be like, well, which putter do I have confidence in, my white one or my blue one? And would lead me to go back and forth between the 2 different putters. And you can't let that happen to you. You have to just stay confident in what you're doing, block out all the noise. And don't get me wrong, it's very hard for me to block out the noise. It's probably hard for you to block out the noise. You got to transport your mind somewhere else, allow yourself to have that confidence to step up, make that putt, make that drive, do whatever you need to do. So I think all of this, everything in this show, comes back to the point of, if you want to beat your friends, if you want to win league night, if you want to win tournaments, if you want to have high rated rounds, You need to put yourself in a situation to do so. And you need to challenge yourself against other people. Because if you're not doing that, if you're not in that super competitive atmosphere, I truly think it is harder for you to then go from not in the zone and have success. I think the more you put yourself in the zone, the more success you'll have.
Yeah, totally agree. And I went and took a look at that reel that they were talking about. And yeah, there was like a bunch of mud behind me. And like I was not going to sink my foot in it. Like I was
Yeah,
already in. And like I don't know how often these people play, the ones that said or play with their friends or not. I don't how often like people are calling each other on football. It's on just that's
virtually
funny though.
never. It would have to have been like super egregious
Yeah.
for me to have said anything. And also, if I was in that same spot, I know that I will probably 9 times out of 10 try to do my best to
Yeah.
stay behind the disc. Um, but yeah, like if it's like ruin my shoe with mud, then nah, dog, it's fine. I
Which
literally don't care.
yeah.
And like also that goes to another thing of, are you really going to let the, I don't know, 1 foot maybe worth of distance, like A, ruin the vibe, and B, like you're gonna let 1 foot ruin your own game? Like, I don't know. I just don't think that's necessary. If you can't beat somebody because they were 1 foot in front of their disc, then like you got to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think, we did it, and hopefully this stuff helps you guys out. I know before we get away for this episode, you wanted to give us some insight on the whole ESPN.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So there was an Ulti World article that came out that said like only 59,000 people watched the Disc Golf Pro Tour on ESPN, and that like I think it was like 0.002% or something like that. The ratings were just god awful. But like, no duh, the ratings were god awful. They put the disc golf on ESPN2 on a Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m. Like, what were you expecting to happen? And that to me is just ESPN setting up disc golf to fail, because the last time disc golf was on ESPN, it's like 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. People are going to watch 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. But I love disc golf, but there's no way in heck that I'm going to choose to watch disc golf over NFL football on Sunday. That's just
A
not going to
rerun,
happen. Yeah, a
not live
rerun.
disc
Yeah,
golf.
exactly. A rerun of disc golf I've already seen. I already know what happens, and I'm just going to be mad at how they produced it. So like, I'm not going to choose to watch that when I can go watch live NFL. I'm going to watch live NFL. So I mean, you can tell me that's a me problem, whatever, but it's a decisionary problem on ESPN for putting disc golf in a position to fail. And maybe that's their way of getting out of disc golf and being like, yeah, this isn't profitable, this isn't going to work. But I think that's a mistake. And I think that if you really want to showcase it, if you really wanted to have success, because literally last year when it was 7 p.m. on a Tuesday, it was the highest thing that had been on ESPN2 in 3 months. So I really think it all comes down to the decision calculus of when they decided to put the disc golf on, which led to it not being successful. I think you turn that around, and I think that you give it a better opportunity on a different day, different time slot. I think it's going to be better. I also think it is hard to get those folk who watch disc golf on the reg to then sit down and rewatch something that they've already seen. So I think there are some challenges there that can be overcome, but that's just kind of my 2 cents. I think it was botched by ESPN pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, and give them the benefit of the doubt. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and maybe that was the only option they had if they wanted to do it in the time frame. Because maybe they could have done it in a better time slot later on, but they probably didn't want to wait that long. And maybe they thought that they were getting a good time slot, even though like Sunday at 2 sounds a lot better time slot than Tuesday at 7 p.m. But you have to think about your audience, like you were talking about. It's not, even though it is like it's better. More people are home, more people are on TV Sunday, yes, but they're at home and they're watching football on ESPN. Tuesday, 7 p.m., people aren't really watching anything, whatever. So, like, even though it's not uh, a hot time slot, it's going to be better for the viewer. So, yeah, hopefully, hopefully it can figure out, because I feel like that's really cool. Just, I know some of the players were like super excited, because imagine being like a disc golfer and, especially if you had a lot of naysayers, you went on tour and you're like, oh, hey, mom, like, oh, hey, friends, like your friends back in high school, like, I'm on ESPN, like that's legit. And, hopefully they can figure it out, because that, I feel like, continues to legitimize the sport. Just saying that the players in the tournaments are on ESPN, that's the mecca of sports. So
Yeah, completely agree. And maybe we'll get to the point where live disc golf is on there. I think that is a possibility. I do trust what the Disc Golf Pro Tour is doing, so I think it is only going to continue to get better. But that is going to wrap up today's show. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you follow us. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, that's what they call it nowadays. So hit that follow button, subscribe if you're listening on Spotify, drop a comment and a like on YouTube. What things do you disagree with us on this episode? What things do you agree with us? We'd love to hear from you. Keep leaving those ratings and reviews over on Apple Podcasts. They are so valuable to helping us get better. And I am going to be starting this week the Form Check Fridays posts and things that we're going to be doing on Instagram. So definitely send us any videos of your form, and who knows, maybe you'll be on the breakdown. So that is all we have for today's episode. We will see you guys next week. Thank you for listening to the Chain Clankers podcast. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Chain Clankers, and hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to us from, so you never miss another episode.